Aloha, everyone. I'm Pamela, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for joining us today for this virtual forum. We are very passionate about affordable housing and rentals. And by we, I mean not only myself and the Chamber team and the Maui Chamber of Commerce, but all of the speakers you're going to hear from today. For the Chamber, it is one of our top priorities. Much of our economic development and children's future hinges on having affordable housing and rentals available for residents and workers. I'm excited today to announce that the Chamber is establishing a new Affordable Housing and Rentals Committee. It will be chaired by one of our Chamber directors, Carol Ryman, who has done a lot of work in affordable housing and rentals, and she will lead the organization, our members and guests in furthering this important work on behalf of the Chamber organization. Today's forum came about as we saw a measure on 201H introduced and heard. And as we listened to the testimony and some of the questions being asked, we were very concerned. If you have not followed this bill, the measure in question was introduced last year by Council Member Mike Molina, and it will amend the 201H housing process. Currently, the state requires that the development have 50% plus one unit of affordable housing to go through this 201H expedited process. However, this measure would amend it at the county level to require 75% affordable housing per development. And while it was noted there's incentives, there were also concerns. We have provided testimony on this measure and watched the hearings along the way. And we know it is so hard to provide detailed facts and examples while under the 3-minute time constraint of oral testimony. And often council members ask yes or no questions, which doesn't allow testifiers to fully explain the rationale behind their answer. In this situation, it's hard to have great dialogue back and forth to get to winning solutions. And from what we saw, it appeared that some of the voices of those on the ground building affordable housing and rentals were not being heard, and some seemed to even be dismissed. Therefore, we created this forum to give a voice to those who have concerns. And there are more than are on this forum, but we wanted to bring you a number of people who could share some of their concerns about the revisions taking place in the 201H process, to hear what they have to say, to hear the reasons behind their thoughts, and to hear suggestions for how we can move forward. So with that, we'd like to get started because it's really all about the speakers and learning. So I did want to let you know you're going to hear from 7 speakers today. Each have been given time to share their allotted thoughts. Our chamber angel, Amber Kutzos, will facilitate the Q&A period after we hear from the speakers. So please feel free to start now, putting in any questions you have as you listen to the speakers in the Q&A box. And then we'd like to get in as many as we can during this forum. So start now as those things percolate up as you're listening to the speakers. And then after we hear from all of the speakers, Amber will facilitate the rest of the meeting until I close at the end. We're going to begin with Linda Kwak Kai Yun Shot. She has spent the last 17 years working for Hawaii-based developers and landowners in retail, affordable and market rentals and resort housing, construction, entitlements and permitting, construction management, and real estate finances and marketing. She has executed and overseen the development of a total of $760 million in total development project costs and $1.7 billion in master plan developments, ranging from the first Class A institutional apartment complex on Oahu in 3 decades to the redevelopment of Kaka'ako in the heart of Honolulu, an urban master plan across 29 acres for Kamehameha schools. Please welcome Linda Schatz, who's going to share a few words with you and some slides.
Great, thank you, Pam, for this opportunity. So I did want to share my screen and a few slides. So I am going to do that right now really quickly. Here we go. So affordable housing, I have a project on Maui that actually used the 201H process. And we did go through an EA process. It is workforce rentals, and it is 60% affordable and 40% market. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the mix between market and affordable and how it's necessary to have the right mix because let me show you the housing ladder. So Maui County has and all islands have this, all communities have this, there's a housing ladder. And there's essentially 4 categories of housing. There's this first tier, which is luxury and market rate, anything above 140% area median income, which requires no subsidies, right? All privately developed. There's a second tier, which is workforce housing developers that focus between 61% AMI to 140% AMI. And typically this category doesn't it's not eligible for any state, federal, or county financing at all, or any direct subsidies. So oftentimes these projects are privately financed. And then there's this third tier of low-income housing developers, and we usually call them LIHTCs, LIHTC developers. They use tax credits, federal and state tax credits to subsidize their projects. And they're the 30 to 60% area median income. And then tier 4 is really state and county public housing, which is really anything below 30% area median income. I want to share this because, at the end, this housing ladder is broken in Hawaii. It doesn't function and work properly. The second and third tier here has been the most difficult to build. The third tier being the tax credit developers are very difficult to build because there just isn't a lot of subsidies, federal and state subsidies for tax credits. We get about $4 million a year that have to be spread across all islands. And it's very difficult. So every year we get maybe anywhere between 150 to 250 units per year on the federal tax credit side. The state also then funds quite a bit of projects through HHFDC, and we may get, 2, 3, sometimes 400 units annually spread across all islands. So that's very difficult market to play in, and a lot of developers try to play in this area, but not many developers are very successful because it's a very competitive process. This tier here is really an area that doesn't have any help. It's really the housing that services your nurses, your policemen, your firefighters, your teachers. This is the essential backbone of our community that falls in this tier. And without them, we would have no schools. We would have no people to keep us safe and healthy. And yet it is an area that the government has really not placed a lot of emphasis on, and frankly has overloaded additional regulations on over many, many periods. So I did want to bring up the issue of the current 201H bill. It pushes the requirement from 50% to 75% and creates an additional burden. And as I mentioned, we did a 201H project, which was 60% affordable and 40% market. We needed that mixture. I mean, we could have done 50% plus 1 unit and then provided 49% of the units as market. We could have used that mix, but we added an additional amount of affordables, about 9% in addition to what's required by the 201H currently now, because we felt it was important to give as much as we could. And the other 40% of the market use was used to subsidize the lower end units. So the blended rate on the rental income allowed us to privately finance this project. And what I also want to share with you, we may have a project on our hands that's got the right, formula for, affordable versus market mix. But then pre-COVID, we took it out to the market of investors, private mainland investors. And we had probably 6 interested big insurance companies and private equity firms very interested in the project. They were going to come down and visit. COVID hit. And then at that point, we waited a few weeks to see if they would still come down, but then the unemployment rate started to drop because we had a voluntary shutdown. And so at this point, we still haven't been able to find an investor. And I think this is where the policy at this point in time is really scary, because we're at a time right now where the economics for Maui are not great. We're in a recession. And frankly, we will have a harder time coming out of it, especially if additional regulations on housing are put upon us, because we can't attract the investors that we need. So I just want to point that particular thing. So just because we solved the entitlement process and we've got, our mix of market versus affordable, the right mix, we still have the challenge of finding the investor to come to Maui, from the mainland to invest in a $100 million project. It's very difficult. So, and then the second thing I'd like to point out is Maui's done this before, right? At one point in time in 2007, the affordable requirement was at 50%. And this chart here shows you that Maui, that the permit authorizations dropped quite considerably after 2007 when the 50% requirement came into place. Then when it was lifted, it started to pick up additional authorizations. And I'll show you a detailed slide, and then I'll kind of end my presentation here with a final thought. You can see here, during that period, during that increase in affordable requirement, the permits dropped considerably. And one of the things I've noticed as I looked at your data is that in the last 2 years, in 2019 and 2020, just last year, permits are actually, approved permits are actually dropping 20% annually. So on top of, just the fact that there aren't enough units being produced, with the recession, additional slowdown is going to happen. And so I guess the story is here, adding additional regulation, additional requirements is not the way to go, because you've done it before. And all housing at the tier 2 and 3 is really produced through 201H and now 2.97. And if we continue to constrain and restrict these projects or put additional burdens on them, we will get the same thing over and over again, which is less units. And so, I didn't say it as eloquently as I could have, but I did want to share these exhibits with you to provide you some information on it. And frankly, at the end of the day, even if you get through the entitlement process like we did, and we were able to find the perfect formula balance between affordable and market, that still doesn't mean a project goes through. It still has to go through trying to attract an investor in a market that's heavily focused on tourism. And so we are now in this cycle where we're not sure when we could get the project financed at this point. So I do want to share that with you, in terms of how difficult it is to build in Maui.
Linda, thank you so much. That's really excellent. I know we've had some people who are already asking if you're willing to share your slides. That would be great if you're able to do that. And I did want to let everybody know that we will also be making this presentation available both on the Chamber's website and other websites, and at participating businesses who want to host this on their website, as well as in social media. So we want to make sure that people have a chance to see these. And I appreciate you, Linda, because you're a great educator. I've watched you present several times, and I appreciate the information you share that breaks it down so we can quickly and easily see what's going on. Our next speaker is David Good. David previously served as the director of the Department of Public Works from 2011 to 2019. He served on the Maui Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board, the Board of Land and Natural Resources, the Maui Contractors Association, where he was also a past chair of that organization, the state's Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Task Force, where we got to serve together, and much more. He is currently the Director of Land Development for Ledcor Development. Please welcome David Good.
Thank you, Pam. Aloha, everyone. Can you hear me? Just a quick mic check.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I have to commend Linda for a wonderful presentation and really drawing attention to the fact of how difficult it can be, and the permit numbers. You can't deny what the numbers say. I mean, there's just been less and less homes permitted over the years for a whole host of reasons. I haven't followed this bill super closely, but I have in preparation for today. And what I see is it's kind of like 2006 all over again, when the council passed the original workforce housing bill and pushed really hard for 50%, even though they were being told over and over again that 20 to 25 would actually work. But there was such a political need at the time that they felt there was a need, at least, to do something that was really push the envelope as far as they could see, and it didn't work. The only units that were built were the ones that my company did, and we lost about $100,000 per unit, and which was part of a larger project, but it was nearly impossible to perform. So things relaxed, and actually a lot of units have been built. By my estimation, about 1,300 workforce housing or affordable units have been permitted since 2015, when the law got amended from 50% to 25%. And if you look at the total number of permits that were issued, and Linda has that information, it's about 36% of all permits that have been issued have been workforce housing or affordable housing since 2015. We're actually doing better than 25%. So I realize politically they want more, which is fine. Then the problem then is just releasing the permit throttle bottlenecks that are happening. So I see in this bill then three main things. One is the council is basically sending a message, and mind you, this is a new council, right? You have at least one new member, a new council that's basically sending a message that 51% to 74% just need not apply. I mean, don't even think about it. That's the message. I also see that going to 75% will reduce the number of units produced. And thirdly, the council is obviously not really waiting for their own study, which they paid for. And there's also aspects of the Maui Island plan that I'm not sure if they've looked at yet that appear not to be in compliance. So in regards to the first point, at 50 to 75% not applying, you know, in order to do what they're asking for, they say, well, we'll consider 51 to 75%, you know, by some kind of exception process. So it sounds like you need to go to council twice. First, you got to go in and say, well, we'd like to do less, and here's why, which means you have to get the land under contract, do the plans, at least conceptual level, to understand what you can do, and spend, who knows, a few $100,000 perhaps to even get to the point to ask to see if, you know, they'll let you in the door. And but the message is pretty much, well, we don't want that. So to me, I don't see why anyone would even bother wasting that time and money. If the only way you can make the project work, like Linda's project, is to have that mix at that percentage. Secondly, as relates to the number of units, Housing and Human Concerns had a letter dated, I think, February 9th to council, and they itemized all the 201G and 201H approvals going back to, I think, Front Street Apartments, which was in the late 90s. So essentially, they had 1,174 units had been built over those 22 years. And mind you, there's quite a few projects that weren't built, right? Because as we all know, the stars have to align or it doesn't get built. So that's about 54 units a year. So the 201G, 201H law in Maui County has produced on average about 54 units a year. If you take out the 50-50 projects, which I think were two, Waikapu Gardens, one, Jesse Spencer guys, the Homa Village, Stanford Carr, I think it's recently completed, you're down to 38 units a year. So 22 years is a pretty good number, a pretty good run of time to see what the effect would be on eliminating those projects. And so you're going to lose units. You're going to go from 54 units a year, which is all 201G and H has ever produced here, to 38 units. I don't think that's what the council wants when they want to get more units, but that's what the record shows. You will lose units. Of course, we know that they're not waiting for their own study, you know, which they're asking for 1,000 units per year. And as we saw from Linda's stats, we haven't been building 1,000 units a year in Maui County since 2007, I think. So I think we've got a lot of wishful thinking if we're going to somehow pass this and reduce the the average amount produced out of 201 by 16 units a year and still meet 1,000 a year. And finally, the Maui Island Plan, I just went through that this morning. I found a couple of interesting aspects in their policy statements. One is to ensure an adequate supply of affordable housing. Well, if you want to ensure an adequate supply, you wouldn't raise it from 50 to 75% for the reasons I just outlined. Another aspect they had, and I think this is worth kind of thinking about, like if we were all the council members and we could vote, they asked for better monitoring, evaluation, and refinement of affordable housing policy in conjunction with the economic cycle. So as Linda mentioned, we're clearly in a down cycle for this segment of the housing market. And how are we monitoring, evaluating, and refining our policies? Well, refining it basically with a sledgehammer. When really what we need is like a shim to kind of nudge it, in the direction we want. So I think these two particular policies are really kind of being ignored in this kind of political desire to show something. So I know folks have asked that they review the plan that's going to be coming before them that they pay for. Obviously that should be done to make a good qualified decision on policy. But looking at the statistics, the ones that Linda brought up, clearly show that something else needs to be done, to have more units move forward. So my thinking is, if they really want to do something as a new council, pass a resolution. Don't pass an ordinance. Ordinances are difficult. Pass a resolution. Resolutions are nimble. They can change with the economic cycles, right? They could say for this year, if they feel they need a cooling off period and they only want, see what kind of projects they get at 75%, make the reso good for a year, but don't do an ordinance, which as we all know, like in the case of the workforce housing ordinance, took 9 years of pain before we could see the gain. And so I'm an advocate for throttling back a bit here and passing a resolution perhaps. Not necessarily one that goes to 75%, but the one that asks to say, okay, what do we as a council want to see in the next year? And then give the nudge rather than the sledgehammer approach to developers to help fulfill their desires. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. You bring such a wealth of experience to this process, and we're excited to have you on the forum. Thank you very much for that. And I appreciate the tie-in with the Maui Island Plan as well, and the history, which you well know, because as you said, those were your units. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And what you're going to hear over and over again, as we've been hearing it, talking to developers, and we're asking, as we're looking to revise policy, who's reaching out to the development community? Because we all want more. And if a development can do more, we're all for it. And we know incentives were put into this bill, but we can always incentivize if people do more as well. So we want to look at ways of doing this differently. So as David points out, we don't get hampered into an ordinance that takes a very long time to reverse, because we're in a critical state right now and COVID has heightened all of the challenges. And so we need extraordinary solutions to move positively forward. Somebody has been doing a lot of housing. Our next speaker is Peter Martin. He is the treasurer and vice president of West Maui Land Company. He has decades of experience as a developer and a landowner on Maui, and has worked to create many affordable housing projects for years and a variety of really fun and unique projects. So please welcome Peter Martin.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me and see me?
I can, Peter, yes.
Okay. Well, wait, I want to show you Maggie eating chicken. So,
well, I'm sure she loves that.
Anyway, it was interesting. I was listening to David Good, and I knew David before, but we got to know each other pretty well. We tried to do Puanoa in Lahaina. I think it was 300 units, and gosh, we tried. I still have the land. I'm still hoping to do homes there. That was about, I think about 16 years ago. And we spent $1 million and a couple of years trying to get the project through. But we did learn a lot from our failure. The next thing I wanted to say is I was very impressed with Linda's explanation. And if nobody else learns much, I learned a lot from her and from what David Good said. And I know next is Howard Kahuni, who we've been working together and getting some homes built. I really like it when Howard moves forward on a project because he's been hiring our construction company to do the site work. And I think on his Pailolo project, we actually did the concrete and the plumbing. So we're very supportive of that. I'm 73 years old. I love the business. I love giving people the keys to the house. I like making a profit. I've had to lay off a number of people from our housing. We do all parts of this. We do the site work. We buy it with our cash. We don't have much problem getting financing. We're much smaller than Linda's projects. And we build the houses. We do in-house concrete. We hire union framers. We're very vertically integrated. We sell in-house, and we have Heidi Bigelow that all of you know is a magician with all this stuff. So I think Howard and I can produce a house in as reasonable as anybody. And I hope we get to do it. I just want to be supportive and get educated. And I'm very fortunate that I'm lucky enough to be involved in this business. And I'm not retiring. I have plenty of money now. I started, as a pineapple picker and worked my way up. And I'm very fortunate to be part of this. And I have plenty of land. We just don't have it zoned. I don't want to own any land. I want to build houses on it. And I want to listen, and I'm going to shut up and listen to Howard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you so much. Well, Peter has also started giving Helly a great introduction. I want to tell you a little bit more about Howard Kahuni Jr. He is the president of Aina Lani Pacific LLC, a local development company specializing in both single family and multifamily residential workforce housing. Aina Lani Pacific, we go by ALP, was formed in 2014 with a mission of developing workforce housing for Maui's local families. He is president of several other land and workforce housing development entities on Maui as well, and has a wealth of experience. Please welcome Howard Kahuni Jr.
Thank you, Pam. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Howie.
I appreciate the introduction by Peter. Yes, they've done some of our subcontracting work for our project, so we're very pleased with the work that they've done. I want to thank Linda for her PowerPoint. Was very, very good PowerPoint. Really kind of gets to the point on where we're at with workforce and affordable housing and what's happening in this county. And, Dave's been a long time supporter of workforce housing, even before he was at the county in public works. And I commend him and his efforts. We've reached out to him, in the past to resolve some issues that we've had. So very, very thankful that, the people that are here today presenting, come with a wide range of knowledge and experience. I think the biggest issue for us with 201H is, eliminating the 75% is an issue. It will be an issue going forward. I think what'll transpire with that mandate or this ordinance change will basically slow the development of workforce housing, affordable housing under that 201H process. Again, 201H is utilized for zoning change when you don't have the correct zoning. So it is a great tool. It's worked very well in the past. But I think, again, moving forward with 75% will slow that process. I would be honest to say that there are other developers that will end up sitting on the sidelines and not moving forward because it doesn't pencil out. People need to understand that the cost of construction is the cost of construction. Materials have risen 100% since last year at this time. And since 2018, they've gone up almost 300%. So, with that being said, and the time that's invested to move some of these projects forward is critical. We work strictly in the private sector. We work strictly with private money. So for us, time is money. If I have to pay interest on this and I got to sit on this project for 2 to 3 years, it gets to a point where is it feasible anymore? The other issue with the 201H, the ordinance that what they're proposing is, they want to eliminate this moderate, above moderate, income range, which is really sad because what it is it's our police, fire, nurses, teachers, etc. And that is our middle class. So what we're doing is we're starting to eliminate our own middle class in our community. And that's very sad. So we're going to have this huge disparity between low and luxury. So what happens? Those are our hardworking families that contribute to this community on a daily basis. I don't understand what the thought is behind that, removing that from that particular process. That doesn't really make any sense to me, and maybe somebody can explain it to me in the future. But it's really sad. I was on another Zoom call later last week, and we're talking about construction costs and some other things. There is no way that you can build a house unless it's 500 square feet with no bells and whistles for under 250,000. They're just almost impossible with land costs, civil work that's involved, everything that gets involved in developing a subdivision. It's impossible. I believe this council, the political temperature right now is I feel like they're, and again, this is very interesting, but we feel like that they are penalizing the developer to some degree because they think we're making all this money and we're getting very wealthy, and it's not even true. The fact is that they're penalizing the buyers. The buyers have to deal with all these conditions that are put upon a project that at the end of the day, it comes out of their pocket. Talking about cost of construction, I recently did a quick analysis of a project that was approved for Lahaina. Great project, rental project. I believe there's 88 units. Kaiahulu at Kopo'ohi, I think. That project, if I'm not mistaken, was budgeted for about $66 or $63 million. And I penciled that out to about $734,000 a single door unit. But our political, our council and where they're at is it's okay because we're using taxpayer money or grant money. But when you come to the fee simple home ownership, it's not okay. It should be at 250. It should be selling for 250, 300. If they can't build it for that, for 250 or 300, what do you expect us to build it for? And I'm coming from the home builder workforce housing side. So it's very interesting, the thought process that goes into this. I totally understand. I figured, I know they want to try and help the community, but I think by moving forward with where they're at with this 2H, I think they're going to really shoot themselves in the foot. And I hope they prove me wrong. I really do. If it's successful, hats off to them. But right now, I think we're headed on the wrong path. So, let's see, what else? Oh, the economics of it. I mean, Linda knows, Dave knows, so does Peter does. it all comes down to economics. Again, we work in the private sector, we work with private lenders, and it doesn't pencil, it doesn't pencil. They want to make sure they get paid, your lender. So it is what it is. So again, I appreciate you letting me be part of this forum and or conversation. I just hope that all the momentum that we've gained since 2008 does not go by the wayside. And that's really scary because I really felt like we were moving forward. We were developing a considerable amount of workforce housing, affordable housing over the last not eight, but the last 6 years or so. What is it? 6, 7, 8, no, 13 years, sorry. That momentum I thought was really moving forward. And now I think this momentum will probably come to a standstill when it comes to 201H. And the 2.96 is basically the same process, but in a different form. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. So.
Thank you, Howie, and thank you for your thoughts. And you brought up a really good point. And I've had a little bit of experience with this lately. You talked about how the costs are going up, and many people don't realize, especially with all the wildfires that have happened across the mainland, that lumber costs are skyrocketing right now. And so we're seeing a lot of costs go up in addition to some of our own processes that increase costs. And as you point out, a lot was said at the last hearing that this bill, this measure is very different from the past measure. And it is different, but what's happening is the same. We need to unite on winning solutions. And what happened the last time is we lost, some projects move forward, but as was pointed out, very, very few. But the bottom line is we're at a time where we have such a backlog of need that we need all partners available at the table on all levels. And that's what we're afraid is, as you point out, we're gonna see people wait, we're gonna see people hold off. We're not trying to say nothing will get built. We all hope that we could be proven wrong. But as Linda points out, as David points out, as you've seen and I've seen, we have a long track record to show that when these kinds of measures are imposed, we lose ground. And so that's really important to us. I really want to thank each of you for being on this program today in this forum. We're going to move into the Q&A portion. Amber has had the reins throughout the whole time, so I'm not actually turning the reins over to her. She's been in control, facilitating the meeting and the speakers all along. But if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and she will read them out loud to the panelists. If you have a specific panelist that you'd like to ask a question of, please add their name. And she will share the questions. We'll get to as many as we can during this time. So please feel free to go ahead and get those questions in, and we'll begin the Q&A portion.
All right, I'll go ahead and ask the first question. Do any speakers believe that the council's affordable housing plan, which is being done by Hawaiian Community Assets, will result in any private sector projects getting approved? And if anyone has thoughts, just go ahead and pop in.
I'll say something here real quick. I think only time will tell. I think what they're doing is, it's another survey, which I think is great. But, after 3 or 4 different surveys within 3 years, you need to take those surveys to heart, take a look at them seriously and see if and what you can do to help create some momentum for building more product. The demand is high. It'll always be high, especially in the state of Hawaii. So again, only time will tell. And I support Hawaiian Community Assets and what they do. I just hope that the council takes a look at this in a realistic way and does what they need to do to release or trigger a quicker process to develop more workforce affordable units.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that. I do think that the council should wait to see the study. I'm not so sure that it's going to say something we don't already know, because I think so many studies have been done in the past. But what they are doing that's different is reaching out into the community to get additional input. So really a grassroots approach to supporting the effort. And I do think that incentives are the key. That is, I think for so many decades, councils throughout all islands have kind of looked at regulations as a way to force housing to happen. Production of housing never happens when regulations continue to increase. And so if you kind of just assume that if you go the reverse way, which is to incentivize, that is I think the piece that we should be looking at. What can we do to incentivize? And it's not just fee waivers. It's about time. I think how we mentioned, fast tracking and trying to push housing out. I think there's also this view of trying to look at how housing is produced, because Howie brought this up, which is we as developers have to answer to Wall Street, especially the private developers. We answer to banks who need a return. We answer to Wall Street investors who need a very high return, and we have to meet those metrics. We don't meet those metrics at all, the deal doesn't move forward. It's not like there's some magical, formula or money or money laying out there that I can access to develop additional housing. We do have to make money in order to fund these projects. And a lot of the deals that I work on are over $100 million, and they produce anywhere between 250 to 300 units. This study is supposed to produce 1,000 units or, provide a plan for 1,000 units annually. And as you heard from David, we don't even meet that threshold annually right now. And so the bar is set really high. And I think understanding that we need outside money to come into Hawaii to pay for all this housing is really part of the puzzle. We can't solve it alone. I think the developer is a rare species now. We're almost extinct. There are not many of us around, frankly. And the ones that are clinging on here on this panel and our other comrades are clinging on with their bare nails to try to put housing out there. And so, it's got to be incentivized.
Perfect, thank you. I think, Linda, you sort of touched on a couple of questions that are in our chat, in our Q&A box right now, which is, what are the solutions? What are some strategies? And, if the council were to do incentives instead, what are incentives that developers need to get to the end goal of getting housing produced?
One of the things that has actually worked on other islands is the waiver of property tax. I know counties don't have they're not cash rich, obviously, but waiving property tax for deeper affordable units is an idea. And then also unveiling as much entitled land as possible. A lot of us developers will actually go through the entitlement process, but actually putting county lands out there to actually get projects going is important. I think Maui is more constrained on the zoning side than any other island that I've seen. And so that is definitely an area to work in to incentivize developers to build.
Does anyone else want to share any ideas, solutions, or possible incentives that would help?
Well, can you hear me? Am I muted? I don't know.
No, we can hear you, Peter.
Oh, yeah. My particular situation is very different. We have some land that's on the island plan. It's about 300 acres in Makila. It's on the island plan. Now it's less because of playground, but it's beautiful land. It has a great view. If we could build a number of units on there, we wouldn't need any government help. It's not a lot of units, but I think we could build a couple hundred there, make a profit, and we could do it with the 75%. It's kind of because I've had the land for 23 years and the infrastructure is all in, the water, and and everything. So yeah, I could make a profit and make it work if the government, and I've tried twice to get government approval through the 201H and been turned down because of just, yeah, a number of reasons. None of them are logical. Just anti-development or NIMBYism. Some of the other areas in Olawala, we have the ability to develop. We own the land outright, but we've kind of given up there after 23 years. We're kind of giving up. But to the question of could we develop in those two locations without any government subsidies? Yes. The other area I have is 250 acres in Lahaina that lends itself very nicely to development. We're stuck on sewer there, but and the political will to get that. So there's a couple that would work. The one comment I like that Howard said, Howie Kahuni said, is so many of our people are making, like I had a waitress at the Andaz. I asked her what she was making. She wanted to buy one of my haiku properties. And I said, what's your income? And she said, 85,000. That's as a breakfast waitress at the Andaz. I said, how about your husband? And he said, he's a civil engineer. He makes 65. So I said, wow, that's too much. You can't qualify for our homes in Powella. The maximum, I believe, there was around 135. So I really like what Howard said. We're losing the middle class. They're leaving, and we really need that middle class. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Peter. Any other suggestions or ways to look at incentives or structuring incentives? I'll just jump in for a moment, and one of my concerns is we were looking at the chamber's position on this 201H change and talking to people. It was, there was a point made by council members that incentives were put in to this change. And usually when incentives are put in, people are more excited about it. But it seemed that those that I talked to in the home building community felt the bill would be, better left as is. And if you want to incentivize higher levels. So if we want 75, create more incentives to drive and hopefully drive and make it pencil out for people to do 75%, but don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. Maybe the bill is better off as is, and then looking at incentives a different way. Those are some of the things that I heard.
Our next question, David, I know you touched on this a little bit, but how do you all feel about the provision that the council put in where they could still consider below 75%, but above the state required 50%? Is that helpful, or does that cause any issues? Go ahead, Howie.
So that again is subjective when you get to council. It's not something that's written in stone. We like to work with exact parameters. So we like 2.96, it spells it out, tells you what you can and cannot do, and you move forward. Now, walking into a council meeting where it's subjective between 51 and 75, you've spent all this money on civil design, traffic studies, everything has to be done. There's a lot of money that's got to come out of your pocket before you even know if you're going to have 51% or you're going to have to develop 75%. And for any developer, that's like putting money on the roulette table and hoping it's going to be black. You don't know if it's going to be red. You have no idea. And it's got to be specific because we work in that world. We know what we can and cannot develop. If I don't know I can turn this project and make a penny on it or break even before I get to that meeting, then it's not going to happen. So yeah, I think that's one of the issues is that's too subjective. We don't know what the conditions will be. And I am, I hate to use the term, but it's a crapshoot. So sorry, my expression.
Yeah, I'd like to add to Howie's comment. I think if you look across the United States, the municipalities that produce the most housing for its workforce are those that actually allow housing to be built by right. So you've got a checklist of things you need to do, like 2.96. You check all the check boxes. It's like known issues that you have to deal with. You solve the issue, you keep moving on, and it's not politicized. Once any project gets to the council, it is political at that point, and things are not necessarily driven by data. It's not driven by facts oftentimes. It's by emotion, political ambition, and that's where housing projects get killed, and that's where our middle class gets hurt and hollowed out, basically. So I think the more we can do to provide certainty to developers so that if they meet X, they can then move forward, that would be much better to kind of streamline and push that process forward.
I'd like to chime in a little bit too. I think I totally agree with what Howard and Linda are saying. And this is almost in response to the previous question. I was thinking about, okay, what incentives would be great? And depoliticizing is probably the best incentive. And you know what? It's good for the politicians. You know, they just set the play, set the field goal post at a certain distance and don't have this, we just, when you set up do I kick the 50-yard field goal or do I punt? And you don't know what you got. And it's hard for them. We're working on a project, it's like 30 units and, you talk to folks. Actually, I'm barely involved in it, so I just hear about it. And the thing they want to know is, well, talk to the community, talk to the community, talk to the community. Well, of course, the community, if you live right next door, you're a NIMBY. It's just by nature. But the reason they want you to talk to the community is because a politician has to make the decision, right? And ultimately, their voters are different than others. So they'd love it probably if they didn't have to make that decision. And they wouldn't have to make that decision if they set up a different paradigm by which those decisions could be made. And so whether it's in like 296, like Howard says, if it's in black and white, you know what you got. Or it's maybe a different type of commission of some sort that has some authorities, and then the council can check back every few years. How did you do? What was approved? But I think, yeah, if I was a politician, I'd hate to make those calls every time. So I think you're onto something there.
Well, I gotta say one more thing about this is and I'm gonna use Dave's expression or his comments that it is workforce affordable housing right now is a political football, and they're tossing it around and trying to come up. I'm gonna fake punt, or am I going to run the reverse? What are we doing? It doesn't seem to land where it needs to land, and or caught by the right receiver. Let's put it that way. But it is hard and difficult, not knowing the direction. We work in a different world. So anyway, that's my comment. I don't want it to be a political football. It shouldn't be. You're dealing with people's lives. These are your community members. This is your middle class. This is your below moderate. These are people's lives. And your job is supposed to be responsible for these people. They are your constituents. They voted for you to some degree. So anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's funny. We see education as infrastructure. We see water as infrastructure, sewer. We don't see housing as infrastructure, as if it was a basic human right that we should have, right? It's something we play with and toy with and kind of use it to just poke people in the eye with. And the funny thing is the people who lose out are that middle class, and they are actually largely the voters. And I think the problem is they haven't connected the dots yet between what happens at council and the fact that they can't get a housing, into any housing yet. The day they do connect the dots, though, I think hopefully that will change the way, the council reacts to a lot of these policies.
I want to jump in. I know we're getting close to the end of our time, and I just want to thank all of you very much, Linda and David, Peter and Howie, and to all on the call for your great questions. You know, it's been pointed out, we're all passionate about this. We all want it because it impacts our community. It's one of the top things impacting our community. You know, if you're a mom like me whose child has bought a house on the mainland, $170,000 for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. My daughter is now going to be teaching on the mainland for a hell of a long time before coming back home because she just can't afford to have her own home. And, you know, we talk about with this median home price going to $980,000 in January, doing the math. A couple of years ago, we looked at it and we said when it was much lower that we would hit $1 million, over $1 million median home price in 2024. So if you already had a child who's going to be looking for a home, we're pretty much getting very close to that right now. And then we said by 2042, we'd be looking at over $2 million median home price. We have to bring all partners and players to the table. We have to find solutions. I think it's great that you all came to the fact that so much of this is we have to depoliticize this because so much of it is politicized. And I was asked a question at the last hearing, that just by giving an option to allow people to go back in if their project was less than 75%, did I not think they would approve it? And the challenge is that every time we've seen that in the past, every time something goes back through another element of a process, as has been shown here, first of all, some won't go back. The costs are already very high, so why take the risk? It's a crapshoot. And for those that do, they often find heaps of other layers added on. And then if in the end it's denied, then they make that land for future development far more costly because those costs are going to get billed and passed on for when it's ultimately developed and sold. So we've got to start connecting the dots. And my biggest concern was seeing what I was seeing, hearing what I was hearing, and not feeling like some of the important voices that each of you on this forum has gotten to hear today. I felt some of those voices were being cut short. We've got a plan that's about to be released soon. We're all eager to see it. As was pointed out at the hearing, it doesn't include the scope of this measure, but the point is, why were we rushing? What is the fast track to change the 201H process when there are concerns, very valid and many concerns? So I really want to thank everybody for participating in this forum, but from the speakers to the participants, if any of what has been said today resonates with you, this is a really important time. We encourage you to provide written testimony or video testimony at the county council meeting on Friday at 9 a.m. This is going to be second and final hearing, and call and email your council members directly now. Share your concerns, because again, as Linda points out, so many people are just so frustrated that they can't afford housing, and we're losing a lot of our residents. I had a legislator say to me, "Oh, our population's finally declining. That's a good thing." And I said, "Are you happy with who's leaving?" Because the people who are leaving are many of our local residents, because we just can't afford a quality lifestyle here without affordable housing and rentals and workforce housing. This is critical, and each and every year it becomes more critical. So this is the time. If this helps you connect, share with the council members your feelings about this. Share your ideas. Tell them where you're at in the process. We're also all working hard to educate the community so that when housing becomes available, those who are on the list and signed up are actually ready. They're financially ready and they can move forward. That's another critical piece as well. Housing is important to us all. This is our community, and we want our children to be able to have an opportunity to live here. So wherever you're at in that process, maybe you're a teenager listening today and you're not quite there thinking about housing yet, but think out how you're going to afford $1 million in the next couple of years, or $2 million in 20 years. How is that going to work? Where do you want to live? Think about options. We also like to hear from people as we're looking at where to place developments. What part of the island do you want to live on? Where do you work? Do you want to live close to work, or are you willing to commute? Help us understand. But this is a critical time because, as was pointed out, while it's not the same as the time before, the way we're going about it and the process is very similar, and history does repeat itself if we don't take different changes. And we can see that very little got built the last time around. So we encourage you to get involved, share your voice. We want to thank you all for attending. We are going to share materials and this video out. So it will be in the next few days, or as soon as possible, we'll get it up on the chamber website. We'll be sharing it with all of our speakers here today. We will be sharing it with the Maui County Council, and we encourage that you share your thoughts. Mahalo, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. I'm Pamela Timpop with the Maui Chamber of Commerce, and we're pleased to present this forum on this very important topic. Have a wonderful rest of your day and evening. Aloha.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you all.